This presentation regards the EDFN 2300 field placement. So we'll be discussing many items about the field placement in this presentation. Our objectives are to discuss the goals and expectations of this field placement. Remember, it's a 12-hour field placement over the course of this semester. So we'll talk about what the intentions are for this field placement, what the expectations are for you and for the mentor and teacher in this field placement. We'll also talk about the necessary documentation for this field placement for both you, the student, and for the mentor and teachers. And also I want to offer you some tools for success for the field placement from some experiences from some other students in past semesters. And also want to offer you some advice about how best to complete the field placement successfully. Remember that this field placement is connected very intimately with your portfolio. The portfolio's credibility is predicated on your completion of this field placement. So if you haven't finished the field placement prior to the due date for the portfolio, you do not get any credit for the portfolio. What we mean by completing the field placement would be completing the 12 hours of observation and documenting that and having it signed off by your mentoring teacher. And we'll talk about that documentation in just a second. But suffice it to say that this field placement is very much connected to your portfolio, and the portfolio is reflective of your work during this field placement. The goals of the field placement. The first goal is to give you, the teacher candidate, an experience in the classroom. Some of you may not have been in the classroom yet. This is the first opportunity that you might have to actually see what a classroom looks like. So you may, if you're going into secondary, for example, you may end up in an elementary school classroom. But the goal here is not necessarily about subject specificity. The goal is simply being in an educational space. Good teaching is good teaching. So seeing a teacher work applies across the board. So part of the goal of the field placement is for you to actually see what a classroom looks like prior to committing into the boarding process into the College of Education. The second goal of the field placement is to give you some experience in the classroom. And this experience is very limited in this 12-hour placement. It's a relatively short placement, but this experience is very crucial for your portfolio because it gives you something to talk about when you're discussing your intentions to become a teacher. So by this experience we mean teaching a lesson. So you're actually going to teach a lesson, a 15-minute or so lesson. You'll work on that lesson with your mentoring teacher. And you'll also work on assessing that lesson using a rubric and using an assessment with your specific lesson content. I'll talk about the lesson plan a little bit later in a separate presentation, but that part of this field placement goal is to start building those skills of creating a lesson and assessing a lesson. The third goal is to actually give you an opportunity to reflect upon your own desire to become a teacher. The reflection that you can do after your field placement is going to be much more valuable, much richer than a reflection would be right now having not been in the classroom. So the other goal of the field placement is to give you some experiences on which to reflect about your desire to be a teacher. You might figure out during this field placement that teaching is the only job for you. Teaching is the only job you'll ever want to do. The other side of that argument might be true as well. You might figure out that teaching is something that you really aren't cracked up for, really aren't prepared for, and teaching is maybe something that you are not as passionate about as you thought, having been in the classroom. That's the goal of this field placement. One of the goals of this field placement, so that you can actually see what the classroom looks like and experience that classroom space now prior to the boarding experience. So those are our goals for the field placement in general. Expectations for you as the field placement candidate. The first expectation is be on time. Punctuality is enormous here. What you're doing is you're showing your seriousness to your mentoring teacher by being on time. You're telling that person, hey, I'm here, I'm ready, and I want to be here. In order to help you be on time, the expectation is that you make a schedule and you stick to it. I recommend that you set this on day one. Set this schedule up early on. And you know your availability at the initial meeting with your mentoring teacher. Look at your course schedule. Know when your times are available. Go ahead and schedule it like a class, just like any other class. Schedule this opportunity out and stick to that schedule. An expectation is that you establish a communication link with your mentoring teacher Some mentoring teachers are very comfortable giving you an email address. Some are more comfortable giving you their cell phone number so that you can text them directly. That's up to them. But you need to establish some means of communicating directly with your mentoring teacher so that you can communicate with them if you have a question, also if you have a situation regarding your schedule. And lastly, the last expectation is you are there to help your teacher, not your mentoring teacher. You're not there to hinder them. So you are there to help them in what they're doing in their classroom and not hinder what's going on. Also, as an expectation here, please focus on the task at hand and nothing else. Leave your cell phone in the car or turn it off. If you need to carry it with you, I recommend that you have it turned off in your pocket or your purse so it's not a distraction to you. I would prefer that you leave it in your car. That way you don't have to you'd be bothered by it. Don't bring food or drink in unless your teacher allows you to. You need to have that discussion on the first day. Don't assume. In some classrooms that might be considered a distraction to students in the room who are not allowed to bring in food or drink from outside. You need to make sure that you discuss that with your teacher before you go in the classroom. And remember, you are not yet a teacher. So don't expect that you're to be treated as a teacher. Don't eat lunch in the teacher's lounge. Use the visitor's restroom. You're a guest in the school and in the classroom, so you should expect to be treated as such, but don't abuse the privilege. And if you see something, report it to the teacher. And if this is a discipline-related kind of issue, if you see something going on, don't intervene. Talk to the teacher about it before anything happens. Obviously, if a student is about to get hurt, you should certainly intervene. But if you, in general, if you see a situation in the classroom, talk to your mentoring teacher about it. Don't expect that you're a teacher in this space. What are you there to do? Chiefly, your job is to observe and participate. The observation, you're observing teacher methods, how they're teaching. You're observing the teacher's interactions. How are they interacting with their students, interacting with other staff? You're observing the classroom and expectations. What are the expectations of this classroom space and how are they applied? You're also observing the classroom environment. How is the classroom structured? How is the classroom organized? How do the students feel in the classroom space? Also, you're observing student behavior. What are students doing when the teacher is teaching and the teacher has their back turned to them? What are students doing? Are they paying attention? Are they distracted by something going on outside the window? Other items that you might observe. There are countless things that you could observe in the classroom. The part of our expectation and your intent here is that you are there as an observer to watch and see what's happening. Also, I do want you to participate while you're there. Help with the lessons if the teacher asks. Sit next to a student and look over their shoulder, see what they're doing. Don't obviously answer questions for students, but help students arrive at answers if they need it. Get to know the students and the teacher. There's nothing wrong with getting to be with good rapport with your teacher and getting to be on a good rapport with your students. Talk to them. They will expect you to act like a teacher. If they see you in the grocery store, they're going to introduce you as their teacher because a lot of students don't know any different. But part of your job is to participate with them and get to know them. And participate in the classroom space. Talk to the teacher about what you can do. If the teacher needs help with something, part of your job is to help them do what their goals are in the classroom, is to help them succeed at those goals. Now, what are you not there to do? You're not a substitute. So if you are put in a situation where the teacher asks to leave the room and leave you in there, that is not appropriate, and you need to let me know that that's happening. You're not a substitute teacher. You are also not there to copy papers or go on errands for the teacher. You're not a gopher. You're there to observe what's going on in the classroom. You are not there to discipline students. That's not part of your job. Your job is to observe the situation, not to discipline. You're not there to text or read or do homework or do a Sudoku puzzle or a crossword puzzle during your observation. Those are all examples of things that I've been told by mentoring teachers that have happened, that teacher candidates have done during their observation. You are there to observe and participate in the classroom, not be distracted by something else. And you are also not there to be a hindrance in any way. Don't distract, don't disrupt. You're there to help the teacher, not be a hindrance. All right, documentation. How are you going to document what you've done? The first piece of documentation I want to discuss is a letter to the mentoring teacher. This is a document that's available to you on D2L. It gives general details about the overall experience, about what the mentoring teacher is supposed to do for you, how they're supposed to help you, and what you're supposed to do to help them. So it's expectations for both you and the mentoring teacher. You need to take that letter with you on the first day. Leave it with the mentoring teacher. Again, that's available to you on D2L. Print it, take it. That letter also has communication information for your professor on it. So it has communication information so that the mentoring teacher can communicate with your professor to make sure that they are discussing any situation that might be necessary. Please take the time log too. The time log is a form for documenting the time. This must reflect the time log that you sign in on at your school. Every school that you attend will have a local sign-in sheet. Get in the habit of signing in on that local sign-in sheet and on your time log. Those two documents should look identical to each other. The time log is the log that will be signed by your mentoring teacher that will actually assess whether you completed your 12 hours of your field placement or not. So accurate documentation on the time log is very, very important. Again, the time log is also available on D2L. Print it, take it the first day. The last piece of documentation is the evaluation form. This is a rubric for your mentoring teacher to assess your actions and your demeanor in the classroom. The evaluation form is something you need to take on the first day as well, so the mentoring teacher has a copy of it. Leave it with the mentoring teacher. The evaluation will be filled out at the end of your field placement. It will be given back to you, and then you will put that and the time log in your portfolio to document your 12-hour field placement. So the evaluation and the time log will both go in your portfolio to document your field placement. On the first day, these are what you need to take. These are the documents you need to take with you: your letter to the mentoring teacher, the time log, and the evaluation. Leave those with the mentoring teacher on the first day. Those are all printable from D2L. Then, every other day, take with you note paper and something with which to write. Don't borrow anything from the teacher. Take a new time log. Print yourself a personal copy of the time log so that you can document your time every day. And then also you'll need your name tag or your ETSU ID that you'll need to wear so that the school knows that you're from ETSU. Okay, if you are an on-ground class, you'll get the name tag from me. If you're online, you'll get the ETSU. You need to use your ETSU ID when you go. Now, documenting your time. You can only count the time that you're actually observing classroom instruction or classroom learning. You cannot count time at recess or lunch. So you should count the time when a teacher is delivering a lesson, or when the teacher is observing, or when you are observing students work on an activity or activity centers. So my recommendation to you is actually to schedule yourself around lunch and recess. So talk to your mentoring teacher so you know when lunch and recess happens, and then schedule your time accordingly so that you're not there during that time and you have to account for it on your timesheet. But again, you can only count time you're actually observing classroom instruction or classroom learning. If you're in a situation where you're actually with a related arts teacher that might see multiple classes during their observation time, that still counts. The time that you're seeing them transition from classroom to classroom, that's still part of that classroom learning and instruction. That transition time is still part of it. The only times you cannot count are your time at recess and time at lunch. If you need to deviate from the schedule that you've actually created with your mentoring teacher, which this should be very, very rare, but if you need to do that, you need to communicate with that mentoring teacher about the situation. Let's say, for example, that you have a flat tire on the way to your observation. It could happen. You need to, at that moment, immediately, you need to communicate with your mentoring teacher and tell him or her why you're not going to be there, and make sure that when you do tell them, explain the situation, but then also tell them when you're going to come and make up that time. They're expecting you to come once you create that schedule, and therefore they may end up actually organizing their instruction around you being there. So you need to be very, very aware that you are a part of their classroom space. So communicate with them about the situation. If it happens, again, it should be rare. You also need to email your instructor about the situation, and again, email when you're going to make up your time so that the instructor is aware of what's going on too. Your time actually starts when you sign in at the school and sign in on your time log, and it ends when you sign out. So again, that time should be the same on your time log as on the local sign-in sheet at the school in which you're doing your field placement. There have been situations where I've needed to take time logs back to the school and double check with the sign-in sheet at the school just to make sure that the times are working out. There have been some strange situations where students have tried to avoid going to their observations, and that is reflected very interestingly on their time logs when they are logged in one time and they sign out the next day, and strange things. Simply make sure that the time log at the local site and your time log, the one that you are hanging on to, have the exact same times on them. Tools for your success. Again, make a schedule and stick to it. The biggest problems I see with folks is creating a schedule and then not sticking with it, and missing out on their hours, or having to do 6 hours in 1 week, which is a slog, which is a lot of work. I would recommend that you make this schedule early on, establish a communication link with your mentoring teacher, so if something comes up, you have a quick way to get in touch with them. Know when you're going to see your mentoring teacher the very first time, what days and times you are available, so you can set that schedule on day one, so you get started on day one. And I recommend that you tie this observation to just a regular class. Treat it like it's a class time. Treat it like just another class meeting, so that you're able to be there on time and you meet for that dictated amount of time. You can get more than 12 hours. 12 hours is a minimum, but you can get more. And that's actually good if you start kind of building up your hours early on in the semester and then simply stick with your schedule and end up with more than 12 hours. It looks very good on your resume. This is something you could add to your resume. It also is something that you can continue to reflect on. More experiences here is a good thing for you to use in your portfolio. And I also think you should be an active observer. Get to know the classroom you are in. Make sure to participate in the space. Talk to the teacher, talk to the students. The more engaged you are with the space, the more you're going to get out of the field placement. So once you get your field placement assignment, once you actually get the teacher's name and the school that you're going to go to, contact your mentoring teacher per that school's preferred method. Some schools want you to email the teacher first. Other schools would prefer you just show up before or after school, or during the teacher's planning time. That information will be communicated with you when you get your assignment. When you know where you're going and what teacher you're going to be working with, get your documentation ready. Print the mentoring teacher letter, the time log, and the evaluation sheet all off of D2L, and prepare a schedule. Get that ready before you go on day one. Also, dress for your success here. Some schools have a teacher dress code. I recommend that you go on the school's website and follow it. If you're working at Fairmont Elementary School, a dress code has actually already been printed and is available to you on D2L. Other schools have their dress codes online. You might also, in your initial communication with your teacher, mentoring teacher, ask about teacher dress code. There is one piece of dress code advice that I do want to give you right now. No jeans. Even if the teacher says it's okay to wear jeans, I do not want you to wear jeans because we want ETSU to be represented in a very professional way, and so jeans, unfortunately, are not professional dress. Now, remember too in all this that your actual job search, the education job search starts now. The relationships you're making right now are the relationships that you might end up getting a job from. Education is very, very interesting in that a lot of job opportunities are given because of the people that you know. Teachers talk to other teachers, they talk to principals, they talk to parents, they talk to staff, they talk to professors. So the work you're doing with a mentoring teacher right now may end up actually being impactful on the job that you want later. So setting a good example and being a good example of a teacher candidate is integral to your future success, and that opportunity begins with your field placement. So I wish you the best of luck in your field placement, and hope that the situation goes well for you, and hope that you have a nice experience in the classroom. So best of luck.